Good morning and welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for registering and joining us for today's masterclass, which is an introduction and an update from Venue Performance. Today's webinar is entitled, Can You Be Sure You Are Maximising Your Revenue from M&E, Meetings and Events? And we'll obviously aim to deliver on that. It's 10 a.m. It's Wednesday, the 24th of January, 2024. And we are due to be with you live today for around 30 minutes, including time for questions. I'm Jane Pendlebury, CEO of HOSPA, the Hospitality Professionals Association, and I'm delighted to be joined by our expert today, Peter Heath from Venue Performance. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning, Jane. Good morning, everybody else.
I just want to let everybody know, please do ask questions throughout. There is a Q&A tab, hopefully on your screen there. So please do ask questions and I'll interrupt Peter and ask them. If there's not enough time to answer all your queries, we'll get back to you afterwards. Just to let you know, we are recording today and there will be a summary of the key points on the HOSPA website. And we will also edit this so that you can review this or share this with your colleagues afterwards. Thank you for joining us, but I am going to hand over to Peter now.
Thanks, Jane, and hello, everybody. It's nice to be with you all this morning. This is our first one. We've been talking for a little while about how meetings and events can have a bit of granular data for the HOSPA membership. So I'm very happy to be kicking off 2024 with the first of our hopefully many M&E sessions. So for those of you that don't know or haven't heard of Venue Performance before, what we do is we do meetings and events benchmarking. So I'm sure plenty of you, if not all of you, are very familiar with STR, which do beds benchmarking. Hot Stats probably as well. They do obviously P&L, but more specifically the STR side of the things that do beds benchmarking. So we do something very, very similar, but we do it for meetings and events, which is becoming more and more of an issue, not an issue, but becoming more and more of a key area for properties, certainly within the hotel sector. But obviously, as we know as well, there's a whole range of properties that just specialize in meetings and events venues that also have accommodation, but are also bespoke meetings and events properties. So we've got some numbers to show you. We've been doing this for several years now. So we've got pre-pandemic, but we're not going to worry about that today because that's all behind us, very, very well behind us. But we're going to look at some numbers and the uptick of M&E and where it's going, and some of the KPIs in terms of pricing and measurements, but also what we'd really like to do is to open the discussion up to you as well to either share your views or experiences, or indeed ask me if you want to see some different data, because I'm going to show you two things. One is the Venue Performance dashboard, which is very agile, and we can shift it and change the filters on the fly. So if anybody wants to see anything specific, then we can do that, and I'll show you about that in a minute. And then obviously I'm looking at the KPIs. That's a bit more sort of static. I've got a one slider, which is very visual. It's very primary colors, which Jane was a bit shocked at when she first saw it. We thought she was going to a reception class or something, but it does the job. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to kick off with the Venue Performance platform. Now, obviously, what we do is we benchmark the property against the competitive set, or the average of the competitive set and the average of the market. So what we're going to do today is show you what the market is doing, and there won't be any properties on there, obviously. But I'll talk you through what you're going to be able to, what you'll be seeing. So I'm just going to share my screen with you now. Let me just bear with me a second. It's not that one, it is that one. So Jane, I'm going to rely on you to tell me whether you're seeing the Venue Performance dashboard.
We are indeed. Thank you.
You are, great. Okay. So for those of you that don't use it or have never seen it, we do a number of things. We measure a number of things with meetings and events. And this one is, it's called the bookings chart. We've got a whole range of different charts, but this one's the bookings chart. And what it shows you is we've got a time span between January 2022, and we've actually looked into the future all the way until the middle of 2024 as well. And what you're looking at is all event types of all sizes. It's not exhibitions and the big sort of trade shows. So it's very much the M&E or the MICE or the C&B side of things. And what you can see is you can see two lines. Now, the light line, and hopefully you can see the light line. The light line is the average number of bookings per venue or per property per month. So as you can see, we came from a relatively low point in January 22, coming out of the pandemic, and that line has just been getting slowly a gradual not slow, but a gradual uptick in terms of the number of bookings. So that basically shows you that the market is the appetite is good, and businesses are booking events into various properties. So it kind of gives you an idea of the pace and of the appetite for what people are wanting to do. And it's a general trend. This is a general trend chart rather than specifically looking at numbers, because obviously your property might well be experiencing something very, very different, but this is the whole of the market averages. That number you'll see drops off a cliff, and that's because we take data from the month previous. So we're now in January, so we've got December's data, but obviously as you can see down here in January, we don't have January's data yet because we collect that in February. So that falls off a cliff. But what you can see is that December bookings, that would suggest that the market is starting to soften. Now, December bookings drop anyway, and if we go back to last year, we can see there's a drop there to December, but this one is quite a significant drop. And there is a discussion around the topic of, is the market going back to normal, or whatever normal is, but there's a normalization, I think, is a phrase that is being used by lots of people. What isn't in discussion is the appetite for running these events, and you can see that in the darker line, and that is the average number of events that take place in a property per month. And as you can see, that's just going up and up and up. That's going higher and higher and higher. So how high can it go, and how long can it continue before, I mean, not that I'm a scientist or anything, but everything goes up has got to come down at some stage. So when is that normalization going to start pegging things back again? What is 2024 going to look like? What we used to experience with meetings and events, less so with beds, but more so with meetings and events, was that the lead time, things would be booking quite a long way in advance. And obviously what you're seeing in the chart and what you're experiencing probably within your own business is that the lead time is getting shorter and shorter. Or should I say, post-pandemic, the lead times were ridiculously short. They're getting a little bit longer now, but the lead time is still much, much shorter than it was pre-pandemic. So forecasting is really, really tough now. And you've got to look at bigger indicators, because even the data shows you that people are not booking into the future. So you can see here, the average number of events booked in the future is quite low. And in fact, if we moved it to the end of 2024, you're only going to guess where this is going to go. It's just going to carry on. Let's just wait for that graph to, yeah. So not much is being booked into the future. Now, again, you might have your own specific, well, you will have your own specific examples of your property, and you might be booking way in advance because of the type of business you run or the types of customers you have. But what this is showing us in general is the market is still on a short lead time, which obviously makes budgeting very difficult. So then you look at bigger macro markets, like there's a big JP Morgan piece of research done recently, and they were saying that the market is going to still grow in 2024, but it's going to slightly dampen down. It's probably going to grow between 6 and 8%. So there's still going to be growth in 24. 24 is still going to be a good year, but I think that growth is going to start to slow down. So what does that mean for you as a property? What does that mean for you as a business or a portfolio? And then, of course, you go into the detail where the devil lies, and then you start looking at your comp set and your property specifically, as opposed to the macro trends of what we're seeing here. So what we can conclude from this is that the market has had a great couple of years. Everything is up. But are those early signs of December, that softening, is that going to start to mean that things are going to slow down slightly compared to 2023, but overall they're going to still be up? What we can do for anybody, and if we have time, what we can do is we can see what the picture looks like for different segments. So, for example, we can look at just the conferencing market, for example. So we just pick the different type of event vertical, and we can look at the conference market, and we can see that by and large, it's got a similar kind of spread, although actually we can see here it's dropped off a little bit in 2023, but it's still strong here. And again, if we looked at let's say, for example, the meetings market, that's probably up to maybe smaller meetings up to 50 people, for example. What did that market look like? And again, that's probably a bit more consistent. And that's not unusual, because meetings is where the majority of the action is within the meetings and events industry, rather than conferencing or banqueting or weddings and that sort of thing. So what we've got the ability to do, we can do it later on, is we've got the ability to start to segment the data, look at the sectors, look at the size of the audience, if that is something that you specifically want to see. And we're happy to take questions on that later. And if anybody wants to sort of have any commentary while I'm going through all this, then feel free to jump in. The next thing I wanted to do was to go into a little bit of granular detail, and to do that, I'm going to show you this chart here. Let me just say play from slide here. Now this is my primary color one. So sorry if it's a bit bright first thing in the morning, but I was fiddling around with the colors and I thought, you know what, primary is good because it's very, very clear. So what I've done is I've broken it down into halves. So first half of 22, obviously over here, second half of 22, first half of 23, second half of 23, and first half of 24. And we're looking at revenues now. Well, three revenues and one size. So let's look at the red first of all. And this is PPH, which stands for price per head, which effectively is revenue per delegate. So a delegate or a piece of business goes into a property, and that piece of business will have F&B, it will have higher revenue, and it will also have bed revenue or other revenue, likes of, I don't know, for example, AV for the tech side of things. So what we measure and what we calculate within the price per head or the revenue per delegate is everything that is pulled into that event. So if there's a bed bank that gets booked on group, then that gets attributed to the event because the event is pulling in that revenue. So we can see what the average revenue per delegate is, and we can see in the red that obviously in 2022 it was pretty good, but in 2023, I think 23 was really when the prices were being pushed up, because the industry as a whole held their prices for 2022 but couldn't hold them any longer in 2023. And we saw the impact of that in terms of the pricing going up. And if we look at the F&B specifically in the green, again, that's where we saw a fairly chunky jump in 2023. You just couldn't hold on to those prices any longer. I think there's a general consensus that you wanted to, because you wanted that business to come back and you didn't want to pile the costs onto the client. But then 23 came along, and it was obvious that with inflation and what have you, and staff costs, you just couldn't hold on to those costs any longer. So you had to pass those on. Interestingly, in the second half of 2023, they dropped back again. And whether that's because costs were more under control. Again, this is macro data, so it'll be interesting to see what it was like for you as a specific property or a comp set. But they're still staying higher than they were in 2022, that's for sure. Higher revenue tended to be relatively flat. So there's a bit of an uplift there in 2023 and certainly into 2024 as well. But the biggest kicker came into the food and beverage. That was the real pickup from a revenue per delegate. One of the alarming things that I think we need to think about, and this is not going to show this in this chart, certainly if you look at 2024. So if you look at the blue chart or the blue column, that's looking at the size of event. Now that is, I would say, a little bit alarming, because what you can see is events are getting a little bit smaller. And in fact, the numbers suggest that in 2023, events were getting about 10% smaller. So events were happening more frequently, but they were smaller sizes. And actually, if you look at what pressures they put onto a business, or as in a hotel or an event venue, you've got costs going up, you've got events that are dropping in terms of size. So there's quite a lot of squeeze on profitability here. You'll notice that in the first half of 2024, the size of the event kicks up again, in terms of average size. Now that's probably it is a red herring, because by the very nature of forward booking, the bigger events get booked the further in advance. So as we move into 2024, in terms of the first half, and as the shorter lead time events get booked, you'll see that size of event in terms of number of delegates come down. So don't be overly confident that events are getting bigger in 2024. I predict, and we've seen the experience happen, that number will drop quite significantly. And there's lots of other anecdotal evidence as well, where people are saying that the events are getting smaller, only by 8 or 10%. But again, if you factor 10% smaller in terms of delegates, that means your overall revenue is dropping by 10%, your costs are going up, and then really profitability is the name of the game. And then if you look at the likes of Hotstats, they're really honed in on profitability, and in fact, we do some work with them, and they're really they're hot on the F&B side of things. That's where the big squeeze is coming from C&B point of view. So those are some of the sort of the big trends that we're seeing in the market. Prices are going up, which is good because your costs are going up. F&B is a real area of concern and of focus going forward. And sizes of events are, even though the first half of 24 shows it's getting bigger, sizes of events are actually getting smaller. So the 24 size of events is a little bit of a red herring. It's accurate because it's future booked, but as the months go into 2024, that's going to come down. So within the context of that, what we can now start to do is dive into the data detail of your own property and your own comp set, and see how you're performing against it. And obviously that's what the benchmarking does. But what these sessions are going to do is just give you the bigger picture, and then obviously we can open it up. So yes, Jane.
Peter, sorry, wasn't sure if you could hear me. A couple of questions.
Yeah.
Somebody is just asking where the data comes from. So if you could just clarify that, and then I've got a second question for you.
Yeah, the data comes directly from the properties. So they're either running Delphi or Opera or Guestline or what have you. So their systems extract the data and send them straight to us. So it's not a manual input. It's automated from their system to ours.
And the second one from lovely Bridget, big supporter of HOSPA, been involved with this for a long time. She's just clarifying on this graph that you've got here, is the average size of event in the second half of 2023 around 38 people? Is that what is she reading?
Yes, it will be. I mean, if Bridget wants to kind of go into more specific details, I think it looks about that, doesn't it? I can tell you that if I get out of this slide share, I can look at the actual raw number, because I've got that obviously on a lovely spreadsheet. But if anybody wants anything more specifically, they can just reach out to me, and we can have a little session, and we can go into the data and look at some real detail. So yeah, I'll stop sharing this now, if that's okay with everybody. We can come back to it, but I think the issue really is going to be talking about profitability now. What with labor costs going up, with food prices going up, with inflation, even though that's been pegged down a little bit, interest repayments and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of pressure on the industry now in terms of profitability. So just keeping an eye on what's happening in the industry is really, really important. And then obviously if you're a hotel or a property that's specifically big on banqueting, for example, then we can hone into the banqueting sector or the conference sector, and really look at those areas. So I would go back to you, Jane, and sort of say, how in the discussions and in the focus groups and your amazing events that you run, is M&E becoming more of an issue, do you think? Is it becoming, as opposed to just the bed revenue?
I think what's happened is that it's being taken more seriously, which is an awful thing to think that we didn't take it terribly seriously in years gone by. Some properties obviously did always take it seriously because it was a big part of what they did. But I think a lot of people have really woken up to the fact that money can be made out of meetings and events, and the fact that it's now a little bit more measurable. There are some metrics in place to help measure how well one is doing against a competitor or just against the market in general is so useful. And we've had these discussions, haven't we, when we've had our brilliant roundtables with Edwards and Finn, and they get their M&E people together, and we have that discussion. I think the mere fact that those are always so well attended and the conversation is sort of so active and vibrant, I think that is a suggestion that things are changing and moving on, and the appreciation of the value of the events, but also the fact that we can now benchmark them more successfully than ever before is critical to that success.
I think that's kind of where we're coming from. I think, we obviously we looked at some metrics, looking at, revenue per delegate and what have you, but there's another key metric that I haven't shared with you, which is rev met, which is revenue per square meter. So obviously the beds have their rev par, which is whatever one's opinion of the accuracy or the sort of integrity of rev par. It's still the most sort of used metric within the bed market, and it's baked into investment programs and everything. But M&E have never really had theirs. They've never had a metric. They've never had a way of measuring, let alone a number that they can measure against. And whenever M&E people get together, they always sort of think that they're different. And what we've found is that actually everybody's the same. And the RevMet, it's quite simple. It's all about how much cash you can stuff into four walls and a roof. That's what it's all about. It doesn't matter whether it's a banquet, a conference, a meeting, a wedding. It's all about how much revenue you can generate per square meter in your property. That's the acid test. So and maybe that's something we'll come on to in a future session. We'll look at, how RevMets have changed, or what the market and what the industry's averages are. But we've got on our platform, and again, if anybody wants to see it, they're more than welcome. I'll show them. We've got a clever metric that measures revenue per square meter, and that brings a commonality. In fact, I was on a call earlier on with Hayward Group, and we're looking at doing a piece with some academic institutions about exactly that, about using those metrics to so that the industry has a common language. What's your RevPAR, what's your RevMet? That's the way it's sort of looking at going. I don't know if any of the lovely audiences, I can see there's about 35 people here. I don't know if anybody else has got a different view, or whether they have any specific thoughts on whether they think there should be a different metric or anything like that. Are there any more questions coming in at all?
There's no live questions at the moment. I would say, going back to that, I remember, I'm showing my age here, but I don't think RevPAR was anywhere near a thing when I first started in hotels. And I just remember the question was always, how many bedrooms have we sold? It didn't seem to matter. There was less flexibility on rate to sort of balance that, but it was all about number of rooms sold and not profitability at all. And although I'm been in the industry a while, I'm not that old. But I think that M&E, C&B, whatever we call it, is catching up on that. And I think these terms will start to become commonplace. I remember for years I used to explain what RevPAR was, and now I don't even think to explain it. I think I hope everybody knows.
Yeah.
RevPAR is. I'm sure they do on this call. But yes, hopefully your terms and these terms that are more commonplace in meetings and events will become popularly used and measured against.
Yeah, it's interesting because when we first started, we didn't have the metric. We were just measuring, everything else apart from giving a number. And it was born out of the industry asking us for an occupancy metric. And when we went back and did a lot of work on the numbers, we realized that it wasn't an occupancy question at all. What's your occupancy? Well, that's almost a meaningless number, because your occupancy could be really low, but you could be having amazing events that are really, really expensive. So occupancy was kind of again a bit of a red herring, and it was more about cash and square meterage. It's because it's a property play, right? That's the whole thing. It's all about maximizing the revenue within a property, isn't it? Hence venue performance as opposed to occupancy performance, for example. So yeah, it's I'm glad it's sort of taking hold. Somebody says that in Germany they use mice view. Okay, that's interesting. I did know about mice view, but I didn't know that was. And so does, if we ask a question back to, is it Mika Clemens Grubb, if he or she is still on the call, do they have metrics like RevMet or anything like that within mice view? If you can you speak maybe, or type, or maybe they've left. Yes, they do have. There we go. Okay, that's interesting. So they're doing it in Germany as well. I wonder whether I don't think they're doing it in the US yet, interestingly. Oh, here comes Mika.
Do you hear me?
Hi, Mika.
Hi, sorry. It's great that I can talk now. Yes, it's I've been working with the tool for quite a long time. This is quite interesting, and they also do it abroad. So you can buy that tool actually. What they do is they get all the information from the square meter used per week and in the hotel, and you give that information to the tool or to the guys, and then you see where you are in the comp set, and then also you can see, this is quite important, which company stated at the comp set. So maybe, for example, Trivago used 6,000 square meters last week in another hotel, so you can call them and listen again, and then you can get the clients from the comset. Actually, this is quite good to have. So I can send you over the contact of the MiceView guys, because I think they're quite good, and they have been doing this for many years now here in Düsseldorf and in Germany, and also they did it abroad. And you can have all the metrics you need. You see where you're ranked. You see what you can do. You can do sales activities on that. So this is a fantastic tool to use. I already gave that to Lizzie from Dalata to say, listen, that might be interesting for the whole group or for the mice houses. And so we really have to see, because it's quite interesting to have a look at that measurement in Germany as well.
That's amazing. I mean, thanks for that, Mika. I hope I've got your pronunciation right. Apologies,
yeah, that's fine.
Apologies if I haven't. That's extraordinary that you can see the name of the company that is booking the space, because yes, that's a well, we call it GDPR. Well, when we were in Europe, we're not in Europe anymore, but I still think that rule applies to us, which is you can't put your customer data into a platform, because nobody would allow that in the UK. You wouldn't
they're not allowed to put in the money spent, but you can see the company, the generic email address or website or the city where the company is staying or booked from, but you're not allowed to put in the 200 people, 3 days, DDR of 85. This is, you're not allowed to do that, but you can see definitely where everything is going to and where's your business. And you can also see this had that request it was lost, or UNC we couldn't offer. Okay, then it went to the Hilton or whatever. So this is quite interesting. If you like, I can send you over some ideas how it looks like.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's an offline call. It'd be interesting to see whether or not Germany is experiencing the same trends that the UK is in terms of where things are going. And maybe Mika, maybe you can share that with us on the next call. Maybe we'll get you to share things from Germany as well as.
So I do the next call then, and yeah, sure, it's no problem to do that.
That would be great.
I have been working with this tool for many years, because I think it's the easiest way to get the clients from the concept.
Yeah, that becomes then a sales a sales tool, doesn't it?
Yeah. and you know where you are on the ranking. You see in January you're on rank 4 from out of whatever hotels. You name the concept to the mice view, and you see where are you on the second place. So you're doing fantastic, and when you're on the last place, you know that you have to do some more work, huh?
Yeah, well,
I'm gonna respect everyone's time. I'm just a bit worried on over time, and I'm always really respectful that we've said we'll be on for half an hour. But I think that is interesting, and Mika, we may well come back to you on doing something jointly. That would be very useful. But thank you very much for joining, Peter. I feel I might have cut you a bit short, but
not really.
Okay, brilliant.
Well, I don't feel like you've cut me short. I think today was an introductory session, really, just to sort of show everybody what the sort of things we're going to do. And what we could do going forwards is we could I mean, I will obviously give everybody what I think is interesting data to see, but if there's anything specific coming back, then I can prepare the other data as well. So more than happy to do that. Yeah, first of many.
Thank you, Peter. And I should just say to everyone who's still here listening that the opinions in the data expressed today are Peter's data, but they are opinions and his interpretation of them. If you need formal advice or you want to get more granular data from Peter, please get in touch with either one of us, and I can put you in touch with Peter if you haven't already got his details. Please do look at our website for any other upcoming events. We've got lots of things scheduled. And as I said at the beginning, we will record it. This has been recorded, and you can find recordings of all our webinars and masterclasses with a summary of the key points on hosper.org. And this one should be up within the next few days. But thank you, Peter. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And we look forward to seeing you all again soon.
Lovely. Thanks, Jane. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye-bye, everyone.